Building React hooks. Hooks let you use different React features from your components. You can either use the built-in hooks or combine them to build your own. This page lists all the built-in hooks in React. And we have state hooks, we have context hooks, we have ref hooks, we also have effect hooks, we have performance hooks, and finally other hooks. So we're gonna start with state hooks. State lets a component remember information like the user input. For example, a for component can use a state to store the input value, while an image gallery component can use a state to store the selected image index. To add a state to a component, use one of these hooks. So we have the use state and the use reducer. Use state declares a state variable that you can update directly, and you can check out the link if you want to go into more details, but right now this is just a general overview. User or use reducer declares a state variable with the update logic inside a reducer function. And here they give us an example. We have this function named image gallery. We open curly braces. We have the cons. Inside of these brackets we have the index and the set index, and we are setting it to the use state, and we are passing 0 as the argument. Now we have the context hooks. Context lets a component receive information from distant parents without passing it as props. For example, your apps.level component can pass the current UI theme to all components below, no matter how deep. Here we have use context, reads and subscribes to a context. We have this function named button, we have this variable named theme, and we are setting it to the use context, and we are passing theme context. Now we have the ref hooks. Refs lets a component hold some information that isn't used for rendering, like a DOM node or a timeout ID. Unlike with a state, updating a ref does not re-render your component. Refs are an escape hatch from the React paradigm. They are useful when you need to work with non-React systems such as the built-in browser APIs. Use ref declares a ref. You can hold any value in it, but most often it's used to hold a DOM node. Use imperative handle. It lets you customize the ref exposed by your component. This is rarely used, and here they give us an example. We have the function name form, and this variable input ref is being set to the use ref, and we're passing null here. Now we have use or effect hooks. Effects lets a component connect to and synchronize with external systems. This includes dealing with network, browser DOM, animations, widgets, reading, using a different UI library, and other non-React code. Here we have the use effect, connects a component to an external system. And the example would be, we have the function name chat room, and here we're having an object. It's gonna be room ID. We open curly braces, we're gonna have the use effect, and we're gonna have an arrow function here. You have your parentheses to the right, we have the curly braces, we have this variable connection, and we are setting it to create connection. We're passing the room ID. Then we have the same variable connection that connects. So this is a method that we have inside of the JavaScript file or JS file. So if you would write this function, it will be in a JavaScript file or a JSX file. Now we're gonna return the arrow function, and we're gonna use the connection variable and the disconnect method this time. So we're gonna close the curly braces here, and as a second argument is gonna be the room ID. Effects are an escape hatch from the React paradigm. Don't use effects to orchestrate the data flow of your application. If you're not interacting with an external system, you might not need an effect. There are two rarely used variations of use effect with differences in timing. We have use layout effect and use insertion effect. Use layout effect fires before the browser repaints the screen. You can measure the layout here. Use insertion effect fires before React makes changes to the DOM. Libraries can insert dynamics CSS here. Now we're gonna see the performance hooks. A common way to optimize re-rendering performance is to skip unnecessary work. For example, you can tell React to reuse a cache calculation or to skip a re-render if the data has not changed since the previous render. To skip calculations and unnecessary re-rendering, use one of these hooks. We have the use memo, lets you cache the result of an expensive calculation, and then we have the use callback that lets you cache a function definition before passing it down to an optimized component. And the example would be we have a function named to-do list, and inside of that we have an object with 3 items: to-dos, tab, and theme. We open curly braces and we're gonna have this variable visible to-dos, and we're gonna set it to the use memo. And inside of the parentheses we're gonna have an error function with the filters to-dos, and we're gonna have inside of the parentheses of the filter to-dos is going to be the items to-dos and tabs. Outside of that we're going to have another comma, or we're going to have a comma, and we're going to have this array with to-dos and tabs. Sometimes you cannot skip re-rendering because the screen actually needs to update. In that case, you can improve performance by separating blocking updates that must be synchronous, like typing into an input, from non-blocking updates which don't need to block the user interface, like updating a chart. To prioritize rendering, use one of these hooks, and we have use transition that lets you mark a state transition as non-blocking and allow other updates to interrupt it. Now we have the use defer value that lets you defer updating a non-critical part of the UI and let other parts update first. So that is that, the use transition and the use defer value. Now we have other hooks. These hooks are mostly useful to library authors and aren't commonly used in the application code. We have the use debug value that lets you customize the label React DevTools displays for your custom hook. We have use ID that lets a component associate a unique ID with the cell, typically used with accessibility APIs. And finally, we have the use sync external store that lets a component subscribe to an external store. And here you have your own hooks. You can define your own custom hooks with JavaScript functions, so you have the link for all of these concepts.